What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast for another episode. Thank you so much for your help and support so far. I really appreciate all of you listening and watching. It really means a lot to me. Thank you very much. You join me today for another special episode, which I'm joined by the incredible actor that is Adrian Schiller. Did I say that right? Is it Schiller?
It is right. Yes, that's right.
Perfect. Yes, we're off to a good start. Adrian is an accomplished actor who's worked over theatre, film, TV, and of course in commercials and also video games for any of the younger audiences listening in today. We'll start with that. His video game credits include Assassin's Creed 3, GoldenEye, Nightcrawler, and Castlevania, in case any of you remember those games from back in the day. He has appeared in commercials. I remember seeing this one on TV a lot, was the Think commercial for drink driving, where I think about 40 seconds Adrian manages to do accents from every corner of the country talking about the negative side of drink driving. Of course there isn't a positive, it's really bad, but it was an incredible 40-second advert which stuck out in my mind, which I just thought, I don't remember seeing that somewhere. That's great. But anyway, across film, TV and theatre, his TV credits include The IT Crowd, Victoria, Undercover, Endeavour, Doctor Who, The Bill, Ashes to Ashes, Silent Witness, Judge John Deed, and Prime Suspect. In film, he has appeared in Paul Stewart, Frankenstein, Tolkien, The Danish Girl, The Mercy, and The Man Who Winds His Own Watch. On stage, he has appeared in Macbeth, Three Sisters, The Veil, A Christmas Carol, The Changeling, Taming of the Shrew, Julius Caesar, The Caretaker, The Dumbwaiter, and of course, The Crucible. And I must stress, this is just a small summary of the epic amount of work that this man has done. If I read out his entire CV, we would probably take up the whole episode. So that is just a summary of some of his incredible work. And so it's a genuine pleasure to have you on today, Adrian. So thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, good stuff. So that's before we came on. It's been a weird time for the industry because we were just talking about film and TV has sort of managed to keep things going roughly after the first few months. But what's been your experience of things? Have you sort of gone through the pandemic relatively okay?
Well, I had there was a couple of TV things that I had booked in which disappeared because they were cancelled in the when the pandemic first hit and people didn't really know how to cope with it. But TV producers, TV crews are problem solvers by nature, because most of the things that inevitably there are some things in the making of a TV program which involve solving problems which are unusual problems. So in fact, the pandemic was a larger problem, but one that was solvable with people being very careful about social distancing, health, masks, whatever it might be. So once they sort of got the hang of it, TV and film started up again relatively quickly. They obviously didn't have the problem of audiences in closed spaces, which has made life much more difficult for theatre and been really tragic for theatre, I think.
Hugely.
Yeah, we sort of I got started again towards the end of 2020. I think I finished doing season 4 of The Last Kingdom. I think it was that sort of the end of 2019, and then nothing really happened until end of August, September, October 2020, when things started moving again. And then I did season 5 of The Last Kingdom, which was sort of the first 6-8 months this year. And now I'm sitting on my arse.
I'm sure it won't be for long.
I did do a voiceover for a video game, but I can't even tell you that much, probably, without getting sued by someone with lots of money. So I shan't even tell you that.
Guys, but keep that on the down low because we don't know who's listening. These production companies have got ears everywhere. They do. So, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's okay.
Inhaling my coffee. Right.
Yeah, that's fine. It's essentials first thing in the afternoon. So yeah, but it's good to have a kind of a perspective on things now, because again, I'm so pleased to have the theatres back, because that was a huge miss for, well, not only for keen theatre goers and actors, but just, well, yeah, for those, for everyone really. It really did rip the heart out, I think, of a lot of people, the fact we didn't have theatres, because they did come back for a bit and then they didn't, and then they went away again, and they were back, and then they went away, and it was really frustrating. But I think now,
and there's been, it seems that there have been much more stringent rules applied to theatres than there have been to lots of other indoor events, which is really, it seems rather unfair. It's the same rules are not applied to nightclubs or to admittedly outdoor activities like football games and so on, but there are ways of handling crowds which are fair. Anyway. It's certainly done. It's always been a precarious industry, and even the very big producers have been hit very hard. So it's going to take a while to build back up again, but it is at least functioning.
Yeah, well, we're on the up now, which is the most important thing. It's going to get better from now on, which I think is the important thing to say. So I think for today, the main sort of focus today, I really want to talk to you about the first thing I ever saw you in, which was the Crucible at the Old Vic, the exceptional production that was on in 2014. It was yourself and a cast with Richard Armitage and Jack Ellis putting on Arthur Miller's classic play, The Crucible, talking about the allegory to McCarthyism in the 1950s. And it's very, I can't really put into words how I felt during that performance, because I looked at Arthur, I looked at The Crucible in school, and to be honest with you, as a 13-year-old, I didn't really understand a word of it. It didn't really speak to me at all. But then once I saw you guys do it, and you really understood the meaning and everything sort of fell into place, I was thinking, wow, this is just fantastic. This is just an exceptional play. I suppose to start at the beginning. So did you have to audition for it, or did they say, is it Adrian?
No, I did audition for it. I mean, Yael is South African. The director, Yael Farber, is South African, and I don't think she knew English actors or British actors well enough to simply cast it. So she wanted to see people. It was cast by the fantastic Maggie Lunn, who unfortunately has since died, but she's absolutely inspirational casting director, who are people that they really are very, I mean, a casting director of Maggie's talent is unusual, and she really, to coin a phrase, makes a crucible in which to put all these people to make a cast, and she's very, very influential over her directors and very imaginative and inspired in her casting. So, but yes, so I met Yael and read for a couple of parts actually, and then she offered me the part, so that was great.
Good. Which other part did you have to read for?
I looked at Paris as well.
Oh, Paris, yeah. And unfortunately, I think the guy who was with the cast with you, who played Paris, is sadly passed.
He's also passed, I'm afraid. Yeah, absolutely lovely man and incredibly talented.
Yeah, it's such a shame because,
well, he and I and Chris Godwin shared a dressing room, and it was one of the happiest times I've had actually. Like, sort of three old duffers.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I watched of course you did the show with Richard Armitage as well, which was amazing, because I was a big fan, having from the Hobbit and everything, and like to see him like to see him do John Proctor was just amazing. And he's one of the
most dedicated artists.
Yeah,
one of the most dedicated artists I've ever come across. He very much keeps his counsel. He doesn't talk much. He gets on with it. He's always he's always giving 100% all the way through rehearsal. And the amount of energy he put into that performance, how he managed to do that 8 times a week and keep his voice apart from anything else, because my God, he was pushing it. But he's really exceptional performer, simply from the point of view of stamina, quite apart from his talent. I mean, just such a strong person, in every sense.
I suppose working with him must have been, because you say he didn't. Did you say he didn't give a lot in rehearsal? So he kept.
Well, no, he just kept his counsel. I mean, he would speak if he had something to say, but wiser than many of us, and myself included, he just, keeps his mouth shut if he hasn't. Other people feel the need to talk, simply because there's a gap. Richard isn't one of them. He just listens. Which I think is something for many actors to realize that they need to do.
Yeah, only speak when it's necessary. No.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think in terms of if you're trying to contribute to the general, I mean, whatever it is, really. If you've got something to say about a performance, which is not necessarily entirely about your own performance, but generally about the whole thing, make sure you really mean it, and only say it once. And if it doesn't take hold, then you haven't communicated it properly or whatever. It's just there isn't room for too many voices in the rehearsal room. It gets crowded very quickly.
Because otherwise it's just it literally just ends up being noise, doesn't it? It doesn't, there is no.
Well, yeah, it does a bit. I mean, I've been guilty of this myself in the past, I know, and I think, it depends on people's individual character and their confidence, but it'll usually be the men. And probably the white men, to be quite frank, who are making their voices heard.
Probably most likely, yeah.
So it's quite a good idea to just really check the thing that you want to say really needs to be said. Shut up.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it. I think it was a Greek philosopher said, if you'd rather be mistaken for a fool than open your mouth and prove yourself to be one. I can't remember.
Yes.
I can't remember who said it. I'm not sure if it's Plato or Marcus Aurelius. I'm not sure.
Yes, I've come across that one a few times.
Yeah, me too. For sure. Speaking of which, so that sort of brings me on to the first question for today, about this production. Yael really strikes me as an amazing person. She I think Richard gave a Q&A actually, which is on Digital Theatre Plus now, if anyone wants to go and watch it. He talks about how Yael's background, she grew up in apartheid South Africa, and she knows the message and the context of what this play was all about. She knew the message that this play wanted to send out into the world, and she talks about the visceral qualities as well, how the emotions are not in the head, they're actually in the body, and you have to sort of summon it up and make it a full body experience, not only for yourself, but for the audience, but for yourselves as well. So I suppose, just to begin with, what was it like sharing a room with Yael? What was her rehearsal?
Yael leads very much from the front. She's an auteur, and as you say, she wants the creative process to be a visceral one rather than an intellectual one. Partly because the intellectual one invites the sort of discussion that we were just sort of talking about, which is it belongs in a different place from the thing that she wanted. I think Miller wrote a play, and don't forget, it's a play against the background of Puritan Protestantism in the 17th century, which is a very peculiar thing. But it's usually presented with all these very sort of uptight people, very sort of bound in and very clean and all that sort of presentation. So it's sort of through tight-lipped, and everyone's very tight. And she wants to rip all that away and say, well, actually, no, they're farmers living in a very unfriendly land, They've got the sea on one side, they've got the Native Americans on the other side. They're living in fear of God and in fear of each other. And it's dirty and brutal. And we're going to tear all that, all the sort of pretense of civilization as the thinnest veneer, which falls away in a moment. So to get to that, we don't want to worry about what we look like or whether we present ourselves properly. We want to worry about the raw of agony, the raw of misunderstanding, the raw of guilt and shame, and the fact that it's always somebody else's fault, and that it's so dangerous. The penalty for getting things wrong, the penalty for these accusations was death and imprisonment and whipping and having stones laid on your chest. It's a very, very brutal world. So she wasn't interested in the way in which the brutal world was held in, which I think is what people often do with that play, to say it's brutal underneath, but we're going to hold it all in. She said, no, fuck the holding it all in. I want to see it. So we'll start from there. And so it's a very dirty world. And the people are very animalistic. And they react very fast. And they're very instinctive, I think. So she tried to base it around a lot of the work was based around physical activity. We had a lot of we always had an hour's physical warm up at the beginning of every rehearsal section, which usually then moved into some creative movement process, which may or may not have been incorporated into the play, but it was to do with exploring things physically. And then, straight from that into rehearsing scenes in the usual sort of way. But it's a very long play. And I think we had 6 weeks to rehearse it, which is not enough.
That's not long at all. It's only 6 weeks.
Well, I mean, 6 weeks is pretty generous. It may have been more, I'm not sure. But I mean, in the modern theatre, you don't usually get more. Producers just won't cough up for that period of time. So, so yeah, it's a lot to get done. I mean, the production in the end was nearly 4 hours long. It was 3 hours 40 minutes or something. I mean, it was more or less uncut. I think it was uncut, actually. I'm not sure. So really, yeah, working with Yael she's quite a tough taskmistress, and that's the way she likes it. And you just have to get used to it because there's no way around it. But you know who's in charge in that rehearsal room, and it's her, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's available on digital theatre. Just go and watch it. It's just incredible. Was that how the opening sequence happened? Because you all did like a movement based kind of exercise to actually open up the show.
Yeah, that was sort of, but I think, as I recall, I mean, we didn't really do the opening movement until we got into the tech, because it was something that she needed to see in situ. Because I mean, the way the Old Vic was, they'd rearranged the Old Vic for that season, so it was sort of in the round. They were seating all the way around the stage. The stage was moved forward over what was the orchestra pit. And so to really understand how that was all working with the dragging of the chairs and the people looking and all the rest of it, it needed to be done with lights and sound on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put a lot of time into that. But I think that she felt, and quite correctly, that you needed to really start with a bang so that everybody could, see what's going on.
It was quite an entrance. It was quite a beginning.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. I think it was Matt Wolfe who talked to Richard about this as well. He said that he was a theatre critic, said that he'd never seen a production of the Crucible which had so much body to it, and again, that visceral quality. And I think that's a testament to Yael's ability to say, look, we're not gonna push the emotions into our bodies. We're gonna get them in our bodies and then just explode them out for everyone to see them, because this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
I mean, you have to. I mean, you start, the play starts with a bunch of white people bullying a black slave.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's very, very uncomfortable. And, as a South African, she knew what that was. But Sarah Niles, who played Tituba, I know that it was emotionally very hard for her to do that night after night after night.
I bet it was, yeah.
But that's sort of what Yael would ask of people. They would say, all right, for this to be a good show, I want this to hurt. I want it to, and that's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah, and what better play to really rip your heart out than the Crucible to,
Yeah. I mean, there was always the irony that the play is, it was written, as you rightly say, as a reaction to McCarthyism, and it's a furious cry out against proto-fascism, and yet Yael would brook no contradiction in her rehearsal room. There was a little bit of, but Yael, don't shut up, we're doing it my way. But isn't that what shut up, you're doing it my way. But I mean, the rules in a rehearsal room are not quite the same thing as in the country.
I just wish I could see that. You guys were just scared to put your hand up and say, "Yeah, I think this scene could."
Well, no, I don't think people were exactly scared to do it. That's not true. But she wished it to be clear that discussion would be at a minimum, and that action would be at a maximum. That's the only way to get it done.
Yeah, because if you just sit around the table discussing ideas, you're writing an academic paper. You're not actually putting on a piece of theatre.
I think there are plenty of good ways to getting to effective results in theatre. I think if you spoke to Patrick Marber about Leopoldstadt now, with his vast cast and Tom Stoppard, I'm sure there was plenty of intellectual discussion, historical discussion, and all the rest of it was coming.
Yeah.
The people have the different strokes, but that is Yael's way. She's trying to find the animal raw that lies underneath whatever it is. She wouldn't be interested in it otherwise.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I really hope I get to work with her one day. She sounds like an incredible, not only just director, but kind of person as well, because her history and what she's been through, that'd be amazing to actually hear it from her. So yeah, that'd be amazing. But just in terms of, as you talked about there, that opening scene, bunch of white people, being essentially, bullying a black slave, and your character, Reverend Hale, was kind of at the nucleus of that bullying towards the end of Act 1, where he's saying, look, Tituba, we need you to wake this child. God will bless you for your help. We need you to do this. You certainly have put these children in this state, and I need you to wake them up. And she's going, I have no idea how to do it. But you're going, no, you do know how to do it. When she doesn't. So, well, what was that to play like night after night, being
it's not very comfortable. No, definitely not comfortable. But I think that Hale is a absolutely committed to. I think he is a good man who regards his fidelity to his faith and the rules of a rules-based religion, a very much rules-based religion, as being essential. And it's only later in the play that he sort of moves to the idea. Well, it's a rules based on the assumption that the rules are just.
Yeah.
And they are by definition just because they are God's rules. And it's only later on in the play that I think that he the humanity in him comes to recognize the injustice of the application of those rules, which is what makes him start rethinking his position. But he's, in a way, he has to suffer the pain of being cruel in order to be just. It's the cruel to be kind. It's the excuse of despots all over the world, and has been for forever. But I mean, yeah, on a personal level, it was a weird thing to do. But from character's point of view, he felt he was doing the right thing. Characters always, I mean, it's very, very unusual to have a character who's setting out to do ill just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
I mean, malcontents in Jacobean theatre sometimes express that. They just say, fuck it, if I can't get things the way I want, the good way, then I'll do it the bad way, and to hell with you only live once. But they are unusual.
Because he develops that hand tremor, doesn't he, throughout Act 3.
Well, that was something that came actually during the performance of it. He says that that his hands started shaking during the trial scene. He says, that this started, and I realized, I think we'd already started performing it. I'm sure we had. It was a couple of weeks in or something. And there's nothing in the script to say that it stops, so I just kept it. I just thought, well, if he's, why it's a sort of nervous thing that he can't control.
Yeah.
So I kept it all the way through.
Yeah, that was really effective, because there was like a constant reminder of what you just said. Like, he thought what he was doing was just, but he was blinded by the court and the sort of and then justice of the court in a way, until he realized on his own that what he was doing was in fact abnormal, was unjust for that.
Well, I think that there is a journey that is being described in sort of religious progress, from the assumption that deities, whatever deities they might be, can do. The first assumption is deities are very powerful, so they can do whatever they like. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're just. But then people who are worshipping them can either be in the relationship of sort of slaves, where you just got to do it because they're more powerful than you are. And then people will say, well, that's not a moral position, is it? A moral position would be, I will follow a just God, and I will fight against the unjust God. Yeah. They may be more powerful, but the moral thing to do is to fight against them. So at that point, you're starting to judge whether the God is just or not. And then after a while, you realize that it's not whether the God is just, it's the judgment about whether the God is just lies with the human. So this is Hale's process. He's assuming the justice of God, then he's seeing the injustice of the things done in God's name. Then he is deciding that he needs to judge. And having judged, he rejects the God, or he rejects that version of it. And that's a sort of process within Protestantism, which is quite well documented.
Yeah, I often, another question I thought of was, do you think, well, it's kind of two in one really. Do you think Hale looks back at his action, like in Act 4? Does he look back over his actions in Act 1, like in your mind, Act 1, Act 2, and does he see the devil in himself? Or did you feel like the devil in Act 1 and Act 2?
I don't think so, not really. I don't think I saw it in those terms. I think he feels culpable for what has happened, particularly to the Proctors. Not just to the Proctors, actually, and he wishes to to take some of the punishment on himself. So that's why he's living in the same place that they are, or he's coming to the prison every day, and he's in rags, and he's sort of had his 40 days and nights in the wilderness beforehand. I mean, he goes off to the forest, and then he comes back again. It's not really explained. But it does feel like a sort of a penitence that he's undertaking, and I think he feels very, very responsible for the fact that that so many of these people have been put in this position. It was he who said that there was undoubtedly witchcraft at play, that there were foul spirits abroad. They had to be brought, and as a result of that, the larger court, the more powerful judges from higher in the church came to Salem, and I think he feels very responsible. And then he comes up against this absolutely immovable rock of John Proctor, who will not lie, because John Proctor sees himself as directly, and this is everything he's known for all his life. It's the one thing that you never do is lie, and he will not lie to save himself. And but so yes, I'm sure that Hale regrets enormously his actions in the opening part of the play.
Yeah,
but I don't think he sees himself as being the devil. I think he sees himself as someone who was led astray, perhaps, by his own hubris.
Yeah, and
imagining himself to be, because he's this sort of bright young spark, or not young, but this bright, up and coming, intellectual heavyweight. He's got his books. He knows it all. He takes it very seriously and does it with humility, and then he realizes later that actually it was not humility; it was hubris. It was enormous presumption that he could know this stuff.
Yeah, and
terrible mistakes as a result.
Yeah, he's more of the people you root for in Act 3, because he questions the ideas of the court, and
he comes out very strongly against Danforth, doesn't he?
Oh, very strongly.
And we don't like Danforth very much because he's a right old wanker. So
he's a monster. He's a monster, Danforth.
He's absolutely horrible. So we're down with anybody who answers back to Danforth.
Oh, yeah,
and the others. I mean, I think this is something that Yael really brought out very strongly. Is the fear and the yes men, and so Paris's behaviour in the court scene is just awful.
It's awful. Yeah.
And I forget the character's name now. The chap who's going around arresting them all, who's sort of
Cheever.
Yeah, Cheever.
Yeah.
Who's now the sort of he's going around with his wagon, and he's like some ghastly guy from
child catcher.
Dad's army,
Yeah, it's like a child catcher or something.
Yeah. It's absolutely horrible. And but how will these people, some through fear, some through worry about money, because don't forget, a lot of this stuff at the beginning is about people arguing about property. It's about who owns the wood.
Yeah.
Who owns the forest.
Yeah, where's my lumber? All that stuff.
There's all these sort of seams of resentment that run through, that cross over different and factionalized people within the community who've never actually named the thing that they're worried about or really stood up, but they just, and they start having, so they all got different motivations. And the poor family who've never had a child, or the child that the children that died.
The Putnams,
but they will not. They can't accept that it's just bad luck, or they see it as a reflection on themselves. But because they see it as a reflection on themselves, that is that in some sense, then they are damned. They are So they have to say it's somebody else's fault. Someone's been coming in and killing their children.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is also part of an argument about land, because the Putnams are relatively wealthy. So, you know, and then they're worried about somebody else trying to take their land or take their wood or whatever it might be. So all these sort of petty worries are played out on this very dangerous supernatural stage. And it starts to, and it ends up with people being killed.
Yeah.
It's really horrible.
Yeah. It's a really just soul destroying play, but it's just one of the most amazing pieces of work I think that's ever been written. You know, if you're doing an art.
Oh, I think it absolutely is, and it came from a place obviously of great anger.
Hugely.
Miller as well. And it wasn't welcomed. I mean, Elia Kazan tried to stop him from doing it, him and his wife. They said, "Are you really going to do this thing?" You know, and this was all the people being blacklisted and you know, the people who would, you know, turn state's evidence, so to speak, in McCarthy trials. It was absolutely awful. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's very easy to see that around us.
Oh,
now.
Yeah, it's they kind of reminded me of, especially the first scene when the Putnams are arguing about where's my lumber, you know, all the land between the river and here is my land. It just reminded me a little bit of the Putnams, especially reminded me of children. You know, it's that they're just like grown up children still arguing over really, really petty things, and these are grown men and women, and it just, it's that essential need for something, or that essential.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think, you know, as an older person, at least older than you, I think there is I think it's a bit of a myth that young people emerging into adulthood regard true adults as people who somehow resolved the petty squabbles of their youth. And they say, that's mine and that's mine. They've got different ways of arguing about it.
Yeah.
Eventually, they are probably even, I mean, you know, even more petty, particularly when it comes to, you know, property and money.
Yeah.
Big chunks of stuff.
Yeah.
People don't play fair at all.
They don't play fair.
They don't. Yeah. They can play fair and be poor. You know, that, I'm afraid that's. Yeah, I'm afraid that's sadly true of a lot of people. And lies behind many people's politics. It's just
stay away.
Well, being able to, you know, get stuff and keep it.
Yeah.
Not share.
No, that's very true. It's very true. But I suppose, how on earth did you guys do it? Because Richard told again in that interview with Matt Wolf, he said that once you guys sort of rehearsed the whole thing from start to finish, fully polished, he was in the corner just shaking and crying and just not knowing what to do. And Yael came up to him and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, we have to do this twice, on a Wednesday and a Saturday." How are we going to do this? And how did you do it? Is it sometimes twice in one day?
Yeah, we did it twice on Wednesday and Saturday, and we had about 20-25 minutes off between shows because of when it started. I mean, it was really, I mean, you know, it took a lot out of you. Physically, it was very demanding for everybody, and emotionally, it was pretty demanding as well. But I don't know. I mean, I think that when you first start doing something, it's always more exhausting. I remember someone once saying to me that why being on tour was always so tiring when you're doing a week here and a week there and a week there. And so there's quite a simple thing that if you're moving constantly into new digs,
Yeah.
So you're staying in a different place. And it takes about a week for you to not have to check where door handles are or remember where the light switch is.
Yeah.
Till your body's learned it. When your body's learned it, that's fine. But when you're on tour, the moment you learn it is you have to go off and do somewhere else and learn it all over again. And that's very exhausting. And I think that the same does apply to doing, to actually performing plays. The first couple of weeks of doing it, you are learning where the light switches are. And then after a while, all that becomes almost automatic. It's something that you actually do have to guard against a little bit, because obviously it's the first time it's happened for any of the characters in any of the stories. But really all you're doing is putting one foot in front of the other until you get to the end. And it should be exhausting. You know, you know, if you've paid 25 quid, 50 quid to come see me in a show, then the least I can do is to turn up and give you everything I've got for that period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it was probably, I mean, Richard's performance was extraordinarily demanding, physically demanding.
Yeah, there's so much to do.
Yeah, and he's so much to do, and more than anybody else, I think. But it was very, yeah. I can see why he would be more like I don't know how you're going to be able to do that. But I mean, for all of us, it was a bit like that. But
yeah,
in the end, you're not working, you know, in a coal mine. It's all right.
Yeah,
you just have to make sure you get a good night's sleep. Make sure you eat your greens, and you'll probably be all right.
I always thought about you guys, well, Richard especially, but the whole cast just waking up on a Wednesday or a Saturday morning, just going, here we go again, 2 shows.
Yeah, but there's a kind of pride in it as well, isn't there?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like, this is gonna kill us. Whoa, well, you know, we're great heroes of the West End, going out and plying our trade, and you know,
at the Old Vic as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, here we are doing this amazing. But I mean, yeah, you've always got to tread a careful path between thinking that you're some sort of artistic hero and remembering that you get to show off for a living.
That's true. It's very true. Do you think that? Well, actually, no. Actually, that question can wait for a sec. Just quickly, the Old Vic. What was it like performing it? I aspire to be there performing one day.
The Old Vic.
Yeah, the Old Vic. Yeah. What's it like working in that theatre?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, we were mic'd for that one. Partly because we were doing it in the round and the acoustics of it were difficult. But I think radio mics are pretty standard fare now in big theatres.
Yeah.
I find it slightly a bit of a shame because I prefer to just do it with your voice. But yeah, it's a funny old building. It's a bit of a barn. And I think the way it's organized, or the way it was then, actually made it a bit more human, because the stalls there are so cavernous. But yeah, you were aware of the history of the building, and you know, it was the National Theatre and all that.
Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud,
Kevin Spacey. He was at the time.
Yeah. Oh God, I was such a big fan. Such a big fan. Not anymore.
Extraordinary actor.
Yeah. I mean, if this, you know, if I may ask this, you know, did you guys? I mean, we obviously, when that sort of came to the surface, did you guys have any trouble with him, or were you surprised when the stories came out, or were you kind of thinking?
I think that was all the scandal with Kevin Spacey came after we'd finished.
Okay.
I mean, they were shooting House of Cards.
Yeah.
At the time, and he came over right at the very end of the run to see the show because he hadn't been able to. But that was before any of that Maybe that stuff came up.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jack had worked with him before. He's, I mean, I don't really want to talk about Kevin Spacey that much, but I mean,
fair enough.
His reputation was very well established.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan, and now I don't like talking about him anymore. It is a shame. It is a real shame. Anyway, moving on. So, so I suppose that whole experience of, the physical demands, the emotional demands, the working on this particular project, do you think that changed you as an actor in any way, or was it just, I don't want to say it was just like another job for you, because I'm sure it wasn't like any other job. This was full on. Do you think it changed you in a way? Did you discover a new part of yourself after you did that job?
I suppose no, not really. I think that would be going too far. I mean, I think anything it was a very big experience. I mean, we played to full houses for however long it was, 3 months, day in, day out. We had standing ovations every single performance.
Yeah, rightfully so.
And it was very, very grueling and very satisfying, and I made some very good friends. It was a battle, and it was a fantastic thing to be a part of. And I think anything like that changes you up to a point. And it's a bigger part of who I am as a professional actor than some other productions that I've been involved in, which, frankly, sort of just rolled past, and I barely remember I did them. But yeah, it was a big event. I don't know how. I think it's interesting as somebody who does tend to come to things or try to come to things from a sort of more intellectual viewpoint, or I had done in the past, to have that so sort of fulsomely and volubly rejected was a bit of a wake up, in a good way, and being put in a position to find yourself in a position where the only real alternative was listening, and then getting on with it. And I think that's good for anyone. But there are some people that that do that anyway, and sometimes they do need to thrust themselves forward a bit more. But yeah, it's certainly something that I will always cherish very much.
Yeah,
it's actually the last bit of theatre I did. I hadn't done any for the last 8 years. Just
really,
it's just because I just happened to find myself doing telly and film stuff all the time, and whenever the theatre stuff has cropped up, it's then, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't done any for ages, and then there was some stuff. There were some possibilities, and then the pandemic turned up, and then there was no more theatre allowed. It's something that there is a vague plan for something that might come at the beginning of next year, but we'll see about that.
I'm sure you'll be back on stage. I'm sure you will.
I do miss it. I mean, I basically was, from the time I was at university, so when I was 18, 19, until the Crucible, I mean, I've done 2 or 3 plays every single year. In the last 8 years, I haven't done any, so it's pretty quite strange. I'm not quite used to it yet.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be.
I don't want to be used to it.
No, you won't. It will come back for you. It will come back for you. No need to worry about that. And I think just to finish on, there's sort of a lighter note, because we talked about the Crucible, and it can't help but talk about some very, very heavy material today, some dark stuff. But it's been great to hear it. Don't get me wrong. But I'm curious to know, how did you approach your role in the IT crowd as the transvestite judge performing in, quote, a gay musical called Gay? How did you go around it? What was that experience like for you?
Well, I think that I remember mostly about that experience was how extraordinarily uncomfortable those stiletto boots were. God, they hurt. It was just horrible. Yeah, in sliding forwards down, and they're about 6-inch heels, and then very tight around the front. God, I don't know how people wear those shoes. So that hurt a lot. I don't know. I met Ash. I don't think I met Graham Linehan for it in the first place. I think I just met Ash and recorded it. But it was just extremely high camp and rather rather broad strokes, I think one could say, with that role. I don't think there's had a very deep intellectual basis.
I mean, I wondered, obviously you knew the part you were playing, but did you get the script and did you ever think, is there any chance I might just get out of this? Is there any chance I might not want to do this at all?
No, not really. I tell you what, though, I think there are a couple of times in my career where people have asked you to do something which is sort of potentially physically exposing or whatever it might be. And actually, it doesn't really happen to actors that much. But for younger men these days, they need to get their kit off more than they used to. And there's a huge amount of pressure for having these slightly ridiculous ripped bodies and all the rest of it. But for women, it has always been like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely always.
Always.
So if something turns up and they say, this is the thing, and by the way, do you mind doing this? Then my attitude is to take one for the team, take one for the girls, because they do it all the time. They do it without ever mentioning it, without ever worrying about it.
Yeah.
Whether it's that they're asked to do sex scenes or just the way that they're asked to present themselves. And so if one time in 50 I have to wear high heels and makeup and potentially make myself look pseudo-sexually ridiculous, well, fuck it, it's not that much to ask, is it?
Yeah, exactly. They didn't ask you to do too many takes, did they?
I can't remember. That I don't know. Probably not, because the things like the IT crowd work on minimal budget and they just have to get it done and move on very, very quickly.
Yeah. So would you say that if actors are in a position like that, if they are just in a job which they just think, which they kind of want to be over very quickly, just get your head down, to get on with it and just do your job?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't expect anyone to do anything that they're not comfortable with. If you're genuinely not comfortable, then don't take the job. But it is worth asking how compromised you truly are. And I tell you what, the most compromised I've ever been, I did a film called A Cure for Wellness, which is Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Oh.
And it all takes place in a fictional sort of health spa in the Swiss Alps. Goes to take the waters, and it seems that taking the waters makes people have weird hallucinations, and it was a sort of horror movie that took place, in a spa. Yeah. And I was playing the sort of sidekick to Jason Isaacs, who was the sort of head honcho. And it's a nice part, it's a nice role, it's lovely filming in Germany. And I've been away from filming for a couple of weeks and got back to Germany, and it was sort of early in the morning, 5 o'clock, cool, you're on set, a bit bleary-eyed, you got the coffee in one hand and a plate of scrambled egg in the other. And there was Gore, the director. And he went, "Oh, hi, Adrian. Great to see you back. How have you been? Good? You good?" I said, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. So we were thinking, would you like maybe another scene? We're thinking maybe there's another scene you could do later in the movie. And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, sure. Always up for another scene. That's great." So Dan, our hero, he's going through the sanatorium, and we don't know if he's been drinking the waters. We don't know if he's hallucinating or what. And he comes into this room, he's seeing all sorts of weird stuff, and he comes around the corner into this room, and there's you being sodomized by a deer. And I'm there with my coffee in one hand and my scrambled egg in the other hand, going, "It's 5 o'clock in the morning, it's fucking winding me up. What are you talking about? Sodomized by a deer?"
I mean, that's not what you hear every day, is it?
You could see the look of surprise on my face. I hadn't said anything at this point. And he went, "Oh no, not a real deer. It's like a guy in a deer mask."
Yeah, like that makes all the difference.
That's fine. Anyway, I agreed to do it. They didn't put it in the movie.
Oh, good.
But that was another one. It was like, okay, all right, I'll take it for the team.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, the thing was, when we came to shoot it, it's very interesting how these sort of layers of embarrassment or worry or how they can affect you. But there was this guy, the guy who was supposed to be wearing the deer mask, was absolutely enormous, hairy Turkish man, whose name I can't remember, who evidently didn't really speak very much German or English, you know. And it also turned out he was relatively religious, and I don't think he had any idea what they were going to be asking him to do in this scene. And he was really, really uncomfortable and worried about it. And that just immediately made me be the one going, no, don't worry, it'll be fine. You know, it was really weird. I'm the one on all fours, for fuck's sake. You know?
Okay, just take this thing and just pretend you're doing this to me. And it's like,
yeah, exactly. And then we're all surrounded by all these people in white robes with hoods up, you know, who were watching us. It was hilarious. Anyway, as I said, it didn't make the final cut. So, but that was literally the last shot that I did on that movie. So they literally fucked me up the arse and sent me home.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't actually. We pretended.
No, it's pretended.
Anyway, on that happy note, yeah. So yeah, I think it's, you know, don't allow yourself to get into a position where you literally feel used or compromised. But on the other hand, you know, there is a way of doing these things where you can feel comfortable. And the vast majority of times, the directors will defer to the performers. There are so many stories of women particularly being put in a position where they feel there's a great deal of pressure being put on them. It's very, very easy to turn that back. And these days there are, you know, intimacy coordinators and all sorts around the place. So
yeah, you know, like the whole Me Too movement, I think, has done some incredible work. I think
I think, and it's actually it's very, very important. And I you know, we just need to take people's concerns seriously, and it's, you know, it's always possible to make these things work.
Exactly.
It's pretty well understood.
Good. And just one last quick fire question, if I may. For any actors watching, would you say learn your lines? We're like, obviously learn your lines, but before you start work, so you learn your lines before you go into the first day of rehearsal, before the first day on set, or is it something you do along the way?
Well, I think it's something that you do along the way because you don't really know your lines just by knowing the words. Knowing the words and knowing the character are not the same thing. I think that there are people, I mean, some people have very strong feelings on this. I don't have very strong feelings on it. I don't think that learning the words verbatim before you start rehearsal can ever be a bad thing. But some people say they feel it is because they want to learn it more organically during the process. If you're filming, you don't have any choice. You've got to. Otherwise, you're just never going to get it done.
No.
There isn't any time to learn it on the set because you're having a camera rehearsal and then you're shooting it. So I suppose I would say, as a rule of thumb, the more familiarity that you have with the material, the better it is for everybody. And if that means you turn up on day one with the whole lot in your head, that's great. If you're comfortable more or less knowing what you're doing on day one and you'll soak up the rest of it over the rehearsal period, that's fine as well. The only thing I would say is don't let yourself get in a position where you're holding other people back because you've still got a book in your hand or you're tripping things up. But you've got to realize as well, having said that people go at different paces. Dyslexia is a real thing. As people get older, they find it harder to remember things and retain things. So, you know, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but yeah, basically, the greater the familiarity, the better for everybody.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think that's a really good place to to call it here today. Yeah, this has been this has been an amazing conversation to have with you, Adrian. Thank you so much. We've talked about.
Thanks for having me. It's very nice to meet you properly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We've talked about dark materials, and we've ended on nice story of you being asked to be sodomized by wild animals. So but I think you could see why some people think, God, these.
Yeah, it's just a Saturday afternoon, isn't it? You know.
Yes, it's those sort of parts, I suppose, people look at our industry and think, God, you actors, what sort of stuff do you get up to? And sometimes you say, yeah, we get up to a lot of funky stuff sometimes.
We do, but I mean, frankly, I think there's an awful lot of people who get up to much darker stuff you
yeah
have to do it on stage. So
anyway, but again, thank you so much, man. If you just hang around after I end the recording, I'll say goodbye to you one-to-one. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic, and I'll be back soon. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Adrian.
See ya.